And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you live today. Sorry to feed you a delayed show or a best-of show yesterday, but we were slammed. D.C. was just slammed. And I think I was the only person who could have made it in. And it would have been a challenge for me. So Jim lives out in Virginia, and Shane and Danielle up in Maryland, and it was just a wild ride. So, but we are live today, and it being Friday, and it being the first hour of Friday, it is time for our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders for our national town hall meeting. We'll be taking your calls in just a few minutes. Senator Sanders, you with us?
I am right here.
Hey, Senator. So, what's on your schedule, on your mind, on your plate today?
Well, we've got some snow here in Vermont as well. So, like the rest of the country, we're dealing with it.
Yep.
But actually, it's quite nice. We got out of Washington on Wednesday because of the snow. But there are a lot of things that are taking place, and let me briefly go over them. In fact, on Tuesday, I believe it was, the president signed a minimum wage increase for employees who work for federal contractors. It turns out there are a whole lot of folks out there who are working for companies who have contracts with the United States government who are making abysmally low wages. In late September, I and 14 others, members of the Senate, signed a letter to the president and said that the taxpayers of this country should not be paying horrendously low wages to workers. And the result is that the State of the Union, the president announced that he was going to increase wages for all federal contract employees to at least $10.10 an hour. He signed that order on Tuesday, I think it was, and that's a good step forward. But clearly, much more has to be done. What we need to do now is pass at least $10.10 minimum wage for all American workers. Tom, one of the great crises in our economy today is not just that real unemployment, as opposed to official unemployment, that real unemployment is close to 13%, youth unemployment 20%, African American youth unemployment 40%. Those are terrible numbers. But that what we worry about is that most of the new jobs being created in the economy are low-wage jobs. Many of them are part-time jobs. So if we raise the minimum wage from $7.25 to $10.10 an hour, we will be giving a wage increase to approximately 30 million American workers. And while 10.10 is not enough unto itself for a family to really live with dignity, it is a step forward. So we're going to continue the focus to raise the minimum wage to at least $10.10 an hour. There are states out there contemplating minimum wage rates higher than that, and I strongly support that. Furthermore, in terms of legislation that is coming up and actions that are coming up, a whole bunch of us wrote a letter to the president, who is in the process now of developing his budget. And while his budget is not defining, in other words, as often as not, the Congress takes the budget and says thank you and does what it wants to do, it does give us an important sense of where the president is coming from and what he is prepared to fight for and fight against. In his last budget, the president put in language which supported a cut to Social Security, which is called the chain CPI, which is rather a significant cut in terms of reducing COLAs, cost of living adjustments for seniors, for people with disabilities, for disabled vets. And what we are urging him right now is that at a time when we have reduced the federal deficit from some $1.4 trillion to around $700 billion, cut it in half over the last 5 years, and that type of cut is unprecedented in the last 50 years. What we are saying to the president is focus on the needs of the middle class and working families, protect working families, do not put language in your budget which will cut Social Security, will cut Medicare, will cut Medicaid. We have a whole bunch of senators who are saying that. For the last number of years, as a result of Bush's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, tax breaks for the rich, Medicare Part D, this country racked up a huge deficit, $1.4 trillion. We've made progress in addressing that. The focus of attention right now has got to be on the disappearing middle class, the understanding that median family income has gone down by $5,000 since 1999, the reality that unemployment is way too high, and that, there are God knows how many people listening to this program right now who are worrying about how they're going to buy food for their kids, how they're going to pay their mortgage, put gas in their car. Those are the issues that we've got to be focusing on right now. As I think everybody knows, the wealthiest people in this country are doing phenomenally well, and we have more income and wealth disparity today than at any time in the history of this country since 1928, and a worse situation, a more unfair situation than any other major country on earth. So the focus of attention right now is protect the middle class and working families, create jobs, raise the minimum wage, make college affordable, and do not cut into the social safety network, which means protect Social Security, in fact, expand it. So that is our request of the President. Furthermore, I am, as I think many listeners know, the chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, and we hope to have on the floor this week, not this week, but next week when we return, a comprehensive veterans bill, which will do a whole lot to improve lives for veterans all over this country. And among other things, it expands VA eligibility. More people can get into the very good quality health care that VA provides. We're going to introduce for the first time dental care as part of VA health care. We're going to address funding issues in terms of advanced appropriations, making sure that if there's ever again a government shutdown, there will be money available to help make sure that disabled vets get the checks that they're entitled to. We're going to have language in there ending the benefits backlog. We deal with educational issues. We're going to deal with an interesting issue that has not gotten a lot of attention. Tom, as a result of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, about 2,300 men and women veterans came home unable to have families, whether they're spinal issues or genital issues. These families, many of them who want kids, are just unable to do that. And to deal with that issue is a very, very expensive process, which right now the VA does not cover. And I want to see that the VA, in fact, does cover that. And there's another veterans issue out there which deals with caregivers. Right now, we have veterans from World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Gulf War, where wives often are taking care of their husbands, their brothers, and not getting any help at all. We want to provide some help for them. So it's a very comprehensive bill. Hope to get it on the floor when we get back, and I hope to see it passed.
That's extraordinary. Dental care. That's
a big
deal.
I'll tell you, when we talk about health care, and we talk about health care a whole lot in this country, we sometimes don't see dental care as a part of health care, but it really is. Mm-hmm. And right now, except for service-connected problems, the VA does not provide dental care to veterans, and I want to change that. So we're working on that. Also, just interestingly enough, I was in Cuba just last weekend, and that was an interesting trip. We can talk about that later.
Yeah. Boy, I'd love to know your thoughts on that. Senator Bernie Sanders is with us. It's our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. We'll be back with more of your calls for Senator Sanders. Actually, we'll start taking your calls for Senator Sanders right after this. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And be sure to check out Bernie's website, sanders.senate.gov. You can sign up for the Bernie Buzz there. It's free newsletter. Plus, it's a great news site. Senator, would you prefer to share your experience in Cuba or pick up calls?
Let's start with the calls.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Bill, watching Free Speech TV in Kiowa, Colorado. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, my name is Bill, and I was interested in finding out if they are still looking at extending unemployment.
Yes.
If not, I'm going to have to wind up starting my Social Security because I can't live the way I am.
All right, Bill, thanks for the question, and the answer is absolutely and positively yes. What Bill is talking about is that long-term emergency unemployment benefits expired at the beginning of the year, and Bill is, as I hear him, is one of 1.6 million Americans who have lost their extended unemployment. And the problem is, within our economy today, tragically, long-term unemployment is as high as it has been for a very, very, very long time. Something like 37% of the unemployed people have not been able to find a job in 6 months. And just to cut those benefits and cut people loose and without any source of income in some cases is a moral disaster, and it is also an economic disaster. So what I would say to Bill is some of us have tried time and time and time again to pass extended unemployment. We've looked at doing it for 3 months. We've looked at doing it for a year, but we keep coming up against fierce opposition from our Republican colleagues who are very interested in giving tax breaks for billionaires and protecting corporate loopholes in the tax system, but apparently are not listening to the cries of people who are trying to feed their families and look for work. So this is a very, very serious issue. I should have mentioned that in my opening remarks, Bill. But yes, the answer is we have not given up on this issue. We're going to keep coming back, and I hope that we will be able to extend these long-term unemployment benefits.
Francie in Reagan, Tennessee. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Thanks for watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV satellite.
Yes, it's just such an honor to speak with you, Senator Sanders. I'm a little nervous, but
not at all. Thank you very much.
You're one of the best politicians out there. I think you are so honest, and I wish we had so many more politicians right now like you. And I know you've been doing a very good job for VA, but I wanted to know with this budget cut that Patty Murray and Paul Ryan broke, did they do away with survivorship benefits for spouses of deceased, disabled military veterans?
No.
No, they did
Pardon?
not.
No, they did not. What was in that agreement, and in defense of Patty Murray, here's the problem what we have time and time again. Nobody wants another government shutdown, wanted another government shutdown. That was devastating. Our Republican colleagues, and everybody has got to understand this, they do not want to ask the wealthiest people in this country who are doing phenomenally well to pay another nickel in taxes. They do not want to end corporate loopholes, or they want to maintain the fact that 1 out of 4 corporations in this country pays nothing in federal income taxes. We're losing huge sums of money in terms of companies stashing their money in the Cayman Islands and other tax havens. So they don't want to raise any more revenue. So the agreement that was reached to make sure that we don't have a government shutdown was not a great agreement, but it did not include the provision that Francie was talking about, to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you. We'll be back with more of your calls for Senator Sanders in just a second. Stick around. 20 minutes past the hour. This portion of the Thom Hartmann Program is underwritten in part by Carbonite.com, Stamps.com, and EdisonFactor.com. Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie, our Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls. And Chris in Minneapolis, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Very well. Thank you for your introduction of Senate Joint Resolution 11, which would end corporate personhood and voter fraud. But I agree with the language, except the ratification part by the corporate sellout legislatures of the states. But why couldn't it be like the 21st Amendment, where they say it should be ratified by convention in the several states.
Well, I'm not quite sure you want to open up the U.S. Constitution to convention. You can have some devastating results if you did that. What Chris is talking about is an amendment, a constitutional amendment that I offered, which addresses, in my view, probably the most serious problem facing our country at a time when we have many, many serious problems. But whether the crisis is unemployment or low wages or affordable housing or college affordability or lack of child care or the health care situation, all of them are related to one broader issue, which is what Chris is talking about, is campaign finance. And right now, as a result of Citizens United Supreme Court decision, the worst decision made by a Supreme Court in many, many years, they open the floodgates of corporate money into the political process. So the result is that corporations now, under the guise of freedom of speech, can buy and control the political process. The real-life impact of this is that people like the Koch brothers and others are going to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not billions of dollars on the political process. So when you turn on your television set and you see some very ugly negative ads coming from some organization that you never heard of, the likelihood is that it's the Koch brothers or others who are just spending unbelievably large sums of money to elect right-wing candidates for the Senate or the House or governor's office or whatever it may be. We have got to get a handle on this because this is undermining the very foundation of American democracy. American democracy means one person, one vote. It does not mean that a handful of people can control the political process and end up actually having even more political power than either the Democratic or Republican Party because they have unlimited sums of money. So I introduced legislation, and Chris may take issue with this or that part of it, but the bottom line is we need a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United and restore democracy to the political process.
Apropos of that, just a quick anecdote, Senator. This morning, I'm reading the Financial Times online, and the third story, the front page top stories, third story is headlined, "Midterm Battle for Pivotal Control of U.S. Senate Heats Up." You click on that story, there's a picture of a man at the top, along with a story about how tens of millions of dollars are being spent bankrolling these attacks against Democrats in swing states. And the man whose picture is there is not a member of the Senate, it's Charles Koch.
Right. No, there was an interesting piece, and people have got to appreciate this. It is quite possible that very shortly the most powerful political organization in this country is not going to be the Democratic Party. It is not going to be the Republican Party. It is going to be the Koch brothers party because they have unlimited sums of money. This is a family that is worth some $75 billion, one of the wealthiest families in America. And their agenda is very clear. They want to either privatize and make significant cuts in Social Security, in Medicare, in Medicaid. These folks want to do away with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Energy. I mean, it is hard for me to imagine why a family worth $75 billion feels it necessary to go to war against the working families of this country. These people believe in abolishing the concept of the minimum wage, abolishing the concept, so that if workers in this country are in desperate shape and they have to work for $3 an hour, that's fine with them. And what they are doing is already having a huge impact on the political process. The government shutdown is largely a result of their efforts because the moderate-type Republicans who wanted to oppose the shutdown were told that they would be forced into a well-funded primary with a well-funded opponent if they didn't go along with what the extreme right-wing wanted to do. And it has a powerful political impact today because people who are being opposed by the Koch brothers, they have to raise huge sums of money. Where are they going to go to? They're going to go to other rich people. So you're seeing money playing a bigger and bigger impact in the political process, and that's why the needs of working families and the middle class are largely ignored. And it is just extraordinarily upsetting, and it's an issue that has got to be dealt with.
Just 1 minute before the break. Charles, a quick question for Senator Sanders. Charles in Opelika, Florida.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Yep.
Charles?
Hello?
Yeah,
I love your show, Tom, and thank you, Senator Sanders, for your time. I really appreciate you. You are a real American statesman. My question is a three-part question. Basically, Bob Corker yesterday came out railing against these workers in Tennessee trying to form a union. And as far as I'm concerned, I've always heard from the Republicans that let business take care of itself, and that's their thing. But now it seems like he's trying to circumvent what workers are doing. And I don't think that's even legal for you to use the law in that way, that you want to threaten these workers.
Charles, you raise a very important question, and you're quite right. I don't think it's illegal, but I think it is terribly wrong for an elected official to get so involved in opposing the right of a worker to form a union.
Senator Bernie Sanders, we'll pick that up on the other side if you'd like, Senator. It is 28 minutes past the hour on the Thom Hartmann Program on our Brunch with Bernie hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls in our national town hall meeting. Check out his website, sanders.senate.gov. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Thom Hartmann Program. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders' international town hall meeting, taking your calls. Senator, was there anything from that last?
Charles from Florida was talking about Senator Corker getting involved in the union fight in Tennessee. It is certainly not illegal for senators to speak out on issues, but he's wrong. He's dead wrong. The fact of the matter is that one of the reasons Senator Corker is dead wrong. One of the reasons that the middle class in this country is in rapid decline is the fact that there has been a war against unions. Unions today in the private sector represent just a very small number of folks, and that means that workers don't have a seat at the table in negotiating decent wages, and employers and corporations understand that. So over the years, they have cut wages, they have cut health care benefits, they've cut pension benefits, and by the way, when they do that, non-union workers suffer as well, because this perpetuates a race to the bottom. So if you have in a community some folks earning higher wages than other companies, non-union companies have to compete for workers by raising wages. If the unions are unable to negotiate decent contracts, everybody in the community, every worker in the community suffers. And, is certainly one of the tools of the ruling class of this country, the big money interest, over the last many years has been to attack unions, to break unions, to make it harder for workers to join unions. We had a struggle just last year in the Senate. Republicans didn't even want the National Labor Relations Board to be able to function, and we had to overcome that. So, my hope is that the workers in Tennessee will vote for a union, and that we see an expansion in the union movement in America. It's good for, in my view, all American workers.
Bruce in Republic, Washington, watching on Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Tom.
Hello, Bruce. You're on the air with Bernie.
Okay, Senator Sanders, I'm on Social Security, and I make less than $700 a month, and I've had COLAs of $10 a month, and I've had trouble finding a place to live. So I need you to throw my hat and other people's hats into the fray to get a raise.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruce. Tom, it always amazes me when folks like Bruce call in, or I meet people like that. Their story is the story of millions of people. And how rarely, on the media do we hear those stories. So Bruce is saying he's trying to survive on Social Security. It is very, very difficult. And he says the COLA's, cost of living adjustments that he's been receiving in recent years have been very, very minimal, and he's absolutely correct. Actually, in the last couple of years, there have been zero in some cases cost of living increases. I think last year it's all of 1.5%. What I would say to Bruce, I know this is hard for you to believe, but this is absolutely true. Every Republican and some Democrats in Congress think that the COLAs that you and other folks have received are too generous. Now, I know whenever I say that in Vermont, people really laugh because they kind of don't believe me. But that's what the so-called chain CPI is about. It's a cut in Social Security based on, if you can believe it, the thought that the current COLAs are too generous and we've got to cut back on them. So, Bruce, what we're trying to do is two things. Needless to say, we have fought, and I've helped lead the effort to oppose any cuts in Social Security, and we have been successful in preventing those cuts against a lot of opposition. Our next job is to increase COLAs by coming up with a new formulation which understands that the purchasing practices of seniors are different than the general public. Seniors spend a lot more money than average people do, than younger people do, on health care, on prescription drugs, on simply being warm in the wintertime. And those costs are going up more than general inflation. So, Bruce, I hear you loud and clear, and it is an issue we are working on.
Howard in Hollywood, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
It's rather good timing because I wanted to suggest that, Tom, you have more time to do this on the air, but the ultimate effect of the two Santa Claus theory is to have a Democratic president lower the entitlements for people. Mm-hmm. That's the ultimate goal of this two Santa Claus theory, which in essence means that Ronald Reagan is actually running the Obama administration. If this chain CPI is actually becomes law.
Well, Howard, let me say this. Somebody who founded a Senate caucus called the Defending Social Security Caucus, we have worked very, very hard on this issue. And I'm happy to tell you that 2 years ago, you had a lot of discussion, and you turn on television and you hear expressions like entitlement reform. Tom, how many times have we heard the expression, we need entitlement reform?
Constantly.
Translated into English, these are cuts in Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. That's what it means. The people who talk about it don't have the guts to even use the word Social Security. They call it entitlement reform. What I'm happy to tell Howard and other listeners is I think we have beaten back a massive effort to cut Social Security. You're not hearing this among Democrats very much anymore. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I have sent a letter to the President with many, many Senate signatures on it saying, Mr. President, in your budget this year, do not include chain CPI, and I've talked to the President about this, and I hope he will not do that. We need to protect the elderly. We need to help them. Many, many, many elderly people in this country are really struggling, and it is both morally and economically absurd to be cutting back on their very limited benefits. A point I think that was made maybe earlier in the show. This is not just a moral issue, it's an economic issue. You do not have a strong economy. You're not going to grow the jobs that we need unless working people have money to spend. And one of the things that we have seen recently is that companies like JCPenney and Sears are struggling. And you know why they're struggling? Because the middle class and working class of this country has less disposable income, and they can't go into those stores anymore. So we've got to raise the minimum wage, we've got to create jobs, we have to expand Social Security, not cut it. And when you do that, you not only help many millions of people who are hurting economically, but because they have a few bucks in their pocket, they can spend that money, and you create demand-side job growth, and that's something we have got to do.
By the way, I forgot to mention at the opening of the show, welcome to WMRW, our newest affiliate in Warren, Vermont, 95.1 FM. It's
Warren, Vermont. All right. Well, that is a beautiful town.
Indeed. Steve in Liberty Hill, Texas. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you both for your work. I'm calling about the Keystone Pipeline, and it's my understanding that the people that think this should be built and be operational say it's for national security and for energy independence. I want to know if you think that something in the order of a phased-in export, I don't know.
Ban?
Not ban, but basically phase out exports of fossil fuels. Over time to give, companies time to adjust, but that way it would give us national security, it would give us independence. Oh, and by the way, it might be good for the environment. So I'll just hang up and unless you have a question for me. Oh, by the way, also, how is the Price-Anderson bill doing these days?
Okay, Steve raises a couple of interesting issues. Well, let me just say, Steve, at the outset, I am strongly opposed to the Keystone Pipeline. I happen to agree with the vast majority of the scientists who are telling us that global warming and climate change is real. It is wreaking havoc today in the United States in terms of floods, droughts, forest fires, extreme weather disturbances, and all over the world. And if we don't cut carbon emissions, it will only get worse. So I cannot understand how the President or Secretary of State John Kerry, who's going to have a role in this, could support the pipeline. I certainly hope they will not when they talk about the dangers of climate change. That's just, you're moving in two opposite directions. You can't talk about climate change and say, we will, in a sense, support this Canadian tar sands production, which is very, very dirty oil. So I am strongly opposed to that. In terms of energy independence, and in terms of Price-Anderson, I myself believe, because I take climate change very seriously, that we need to fundamentally transform our energy system away from fossil fuel into a energy efficiency. And we're working very hard. I have an amendment that I hope will get to the floor soon. Would be $1 billion to help states fund energy efficiency. In my state of Vermont, where the weather gets 20, 25 below zero, we can cut people's fuel bills in half by making sure that their homes and that the buildings and schools are energy efficient. That means well insulated, good windows, good roofing. Literally cut fuel bills in half, cut carbon emissions in half. Plus the fact that we've got to move aggressively in wind, solar, geothermal, biomass, heat pumps, a whole lot of technology out there to enable us to move away from fossil fuels.
Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls in our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. We'll be back in just a moment with more of your calls for Senator Sanders.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And you can check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov. Welcome back, and let's see here. Paul in South Lyon, Michigan, watching Free Speech TV on the Dish satellite TV system. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, it's an honor to talk to you again, Senator. I think I figured out why the Republicans are doing nothing in Congress. They get government checks, and that causes people to not work, so the Republicans claim. So the only way to force Republicans to work is to cut off their government paychecks in November. But anyway, the Republicans and the media have putting out a bunch of false claims about Obamacare cutting jobs, and the CBO didn't say that. They actually said that it will allow 2 million people to voluntarily retire, which will create 2 million job openings for other people, and there will be millions of jobs created by healthcare, requiring healthcare people to be hired, and also by cutting the deficit by $1 trillion, which will allow the government to rebuild the infrastructure, putting millions and millions of people to work. Isn't that the case?
I think it is essentially the case. Here's the story. We have the most wasteful, bureaucratic, and irrational healthcare non-system in the entire world. We spend almost twice as much as any other country, and yet our healthcare outcomes are in many cases worse than many other countries. I mentioned earlier, Tom, that I was in Cuba over the weekend, and I happened to have the opportunity to meet with a whole lot of folks in the Cuban healthcare system. And in a country that has many, many problems, they do terrible with housing, they're doing terrible with agriculture, they actually do very well in terms of their healthcare system. They spend a fraction of what we spend per person, and yet their life expectancy and their infant mortality rates are very close to where we are. And the reason for that is they rely a lot on primary health care. They produce a whole lot of doctors. People walk into the doctor's office and without worrying about having to pay a penny, they get the care they need. Prescription drugs are free. And that lays the groundwork for a very cost-effective, good-quality system. Paul talks about the ACA and the Affordable Care Act and the CBO report. What the report says is that in our country today, we have millions of people who are staying on their jobs not because they want to be on that particular job, but because they have got to be on that job in order to get health care for their families. I remember a story a couple of years ago where some guy joined the United States military. You know why he joined the military? Not because he wanted to be in the military, but because his wife was struggling with breast cancer. This was the only way he knew to get her the treatment that she needed. And you got millions of people who are at work that they don't enjoy, but they have to be there to get health care. And as Paul indicated, what the ACA has done is say, well, guess what? There is now another opportunity, either through the expansion of Medicaid or through the exchanges, that you can get health care. And that opens up job openings for other people. The other thing that it does, which is important, a lot of folks out there are entrepreneurial types. They want to start businesses. Well, you don't have any money today, and you go out and you start a business, it may be very hard for you to get health care. And that's why people are staying at jobs they would rather not stay in. But this will open the opportunity for people to go out, get health care, and start a business, which will be a good thing for the economy.
10 minutes before the hour, it's Brunch with Bernie. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls here in our National Town Hall meeting. We'll be back with more of your calls for Senator Sanders right after this. 10 minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And it's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders. Bernie, we always end the hour like this. I've got calls for you from Ohio, New York, Illinois, Colorado, Texas, Kentucky, New York, California, Illinois, and Missouri.
Is that all?
That's all. Okay, let's start with John in Columbus, Ohio. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, Tom. Hi, Senator Sanders. Thank you both for everything that you do. And the question that I had regards student loans, because a lot of members of my generation and my comrades and I, of course, come out of college, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. A bachelor's degree is bare minimum. It's if you want to be competitive in this labor market. Those of us who seek professional degrees incur additional debt. And I know there was something on the table in Congress a while back, maybe for student loan reform. Is there anything going on with that now? Or
Yes, it is a huge issue, John, and thanks for raising it. The sad reality is now that student indebtedness, Tom, is at a higher rate, it's over $1 trillion, than credit card debt.
Yeah.
And what John is articulating is the fact not only that students from getting a BA or a BS, but graduate school are coming out very deeply in debt. I last year talked to a couple of dentists in Vermont, young dentists, came out of dental school over $200,000 in debt. So there are a number of ideas out there, but John, this is a very, very important issue. It's important in the sense that if people graduate school tens and tens of thousands of dollars in debt, it will make their career choices really unfair, and they're going to have to go into those areas where they can make quick dollars rather than in those areas that they would like to go in. And we see this in healthcare, for example. Doctors who would like to be primary care physicians can't afford to do that. They have to go into specialties. The country suffers, but they need to make the money they need in order to pay back their student debts. There are a number of ideas out there. One of them it addresses the issue that right now the federal government actually makes tens of billions of dollars off of student loans during the lifetime of those loans. And whether, in my view, the federal government should not be making a profit off of working class people who are struggling to go to college. So that's one area, and if we can deal with that issue, I think we can cut student loans. We attempted a number of months ago to keep student loan interest rates at 3.4%. We didn't have the support to do that, and a bill that I was not comfortable with and voted against ended up being passed. But the Higher Education Act is being reauthorized. This issue will come up, and I think as a nation, we've got to make sure that no person does not go to college because they can't afford to and because they fear these deep debts, and we can't keep young people chained to these debts after they get out of school. So it is a very significant issue. There will be a lot of debate and discussion about it.
Pete in West Henrietta, New York. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you both for your work. In an article, Scientific American, the April 15, 2013 issue, there's an article titled, How to Power the World Without Fossil Fuels. Mark Jacobson says he can run the planet solely on wind, water, and solar energy. First stop, New York State. He's completed the plan for New York and is near completing the plan for California. But the beginning of the article says 3 times now Mark Jacobson has gone out on a limb. In 2009, he and co-author Mark DeLucci published a cover story in Scientific American that showed how the entire world could get all of its energy, fuel as well as electricity, from wind, water, and solar sources by 2030. Tom, I ask you if you could interview either one or both of these gentlemen, and Senator, is it possible for you to call a hearing and have these 2 gentlemen come in and testify?
Pete, thanks very much. I did not. Thanks for the reference to the Scientific American article, and I will read it. I can't comment on the article, but I agree that there is unbelievable potential if we invest in sustainable energies like wind, solar, geothermal is there. I think biomass can play an important role. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we are wasting huge amounts of money because our buildings and our homes are energy inefficient. I believe that we can, in a very short period of time, move away from fossil fuels. And by the way, when you do that, if we are producing these wind turbines, if we're producing these solar panels in the United States of America, we can create a whole lot of jobs as well. Just one other point. Just this week, there was, I believe, in California, Southern California, what we call a concentrated solar power plant, as opposed to photovoltaics. Opened up, I think the project was called the Ivanpah Project. And Tom, this solar utility project is going to provide electricity for 130,000 households.
Whoa.
We got that?
Yeah.
One large solar project, 130,000 households. That's what the future is about. And by the way, that technology is only going to become more and more efficient, whether it is solar, whether it's wind, or other technologies. So I feel very strongly that the mission of today, the goal of today, is to transform our energy system, cut greenhouse gas emissions, lead the world in this new technology, help other countries, save the planet, create jobs, lower fuel bills, clean up the air. Man, this is a win-win-win-win situation. And I look forward to reading those articles. And yes, Pete, I am a member of the Energy and Environmental Committee, and this is something I will give thought to.
And I'll check it out, too, with the eye to getting these guys on as guests. Bernie, we've got just a minute left in this hour. Your thoughts for the coming week?
Well, the coming week, Congress is not going to be in session, taking off for the President's holiday. There are, as you and I have discussed, Tom, just enormous problems facing our country. And while we have made very good progress in a number of areas with regard to human rights, whether it is civil rights and fighting against racism or discrimination against women or discrimination against gay people, the economic struggle sits in front of us. It is getting worse, not better, and we've got to confront this massive amount of income and wealth inequality, create jobs, raise wages, and that's what we've got to focus on.
no small job. Senator Sanders, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Great talking to you. We'll be back.